Good evening. This is Westeros Verdict, where we examine the characters of Game of Thrones not through the lens of fandom, but through the lens of philosophy and record. Today we examine Sir Gregor Clegane, the mountain that rides. He is a figure that generates strong reactions: fear, disgust, fascination. But here, we do not react. We analyze. We will examine what the documented record shows, what the philosophy of power reveals, and what the honest accounting tells us about a man shaped by his world. This will be a 15-minute examination. Let the thinking begin. We begin with the earliest documented account of Gregor Clegane, as recorded by his brother, Sir Sandor, in the novels of George R.R. Martin. The account describes an incident from childhood. According to Sir Sandor, Gregor engaged in an act of severe domestic discipline against a family member. The method was extreme. The response from authority was none. Now, in philosophy, we examine this through the lens of nature versus nurture. The question every court asks: was this the boy he was, or the boy he became? The Greek philosopher Plato argued that children are born with inherent moral potential, but that potential is shaped by the environment in which they develop. A child raised in a household where violence is normalized becomes an adult who views violence as normal.
The record shows a household where such behavior was not corrected. This is not an excuse, it is an explanation. The ledger records: at an early age, Gregor Clegane demonstrated a pattern of behavior that was neither corrected nor challenged. The environment permitted what should have been prevented. Section 1. The early record, documented and filed. We move forward to the year 298 AC, to the tourney at Harrenhal. This is the first incident recorded in the novel A Game of Thrones. Sir Gregor Clegane, now a grown knight, participated in a jousting match against Sir Hugh of the Vale. The lance struck true. The opponent fell. But what followed is what concerns our philosophical examination. According to the record, Gregor continued his actions after the opponent was downed. Multiple witnesses were required to intervene and physically separate him from the situation. Now, we examine this through the lens of Stoic philosophy, specifically the writings of Seneca, who argued the greatest remedy for anger is delay. The opposite of delay is impulse, the inability to pause, the inability to recognize when an action has achieved its purpose. The record shows a man who, in that moment, either could not or would not recognize when to stop. This is not strength. It is the absence of self-mastery.
The prosecution in any real trial would call this excessive force. The defense would call it passion in combat. Both interpretations have merit. The ledger records a documented incident requiring external intervention to end. The first recorded instance of what would become a documented pattern. Section 2. The tourney incident, documented and filed. We now examine the most documented period of Sir Gregor's life, the War of the Five Kings, and specifically the military campaigns in the Riverlands. According to the record, Sir Gregor served as a commander in the Lannister military operations. His approach to command was distinctive. Rather than the conventional methods of siege and negotiation, The record describes a strategy of shock and terror, civilian targets, property destruction, the systematic breaking of a regime's will to resist. Here we turn to the political philosopher Thomas Hobbes, who wrote in Leviathan that in a state of nature, life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Hobbes argued that people accept strong authority to escape this state. But what happens when that authority itself becomes the source of terror? The Riverlands campaign is, in philosophical terms, a study in state-sponsored fear. The army did not merely fight enemies, it sought to demoralize them.
The record shows documented actions against civilian populations. It shows the displacement of thousands. It shows a region reduced to chaos. The prosecution's view: this was cruelty without justification. The defense's view: this was the accepted method of medieval warfare. Both are historically accurate. The ledger records: Sir Gregor Clegane was the operational figurehead of a campaign that produced documented humanitarian consequences. Whether this reflects personal philosophy or following orders, the record stands. Section 3. The Riverlands Campaign. Documented and filed. We come to the event that defined Sir Gregor's final chapter: the trial by combat against Prince Oberyn Martell of Dorne. According to the record, the trial was held to determine the fate of Gregor, who was accused by Oberyn of historical crimes against Oberyn's family. The background is essential. Years earlier, during the sack of King's Landing, a noblewoman named Elia Martell, wife of a Targaryen prince, was harmed. Her children were also harmed. The record does not soften this. It is one of the darkest moments in the history of the Seven Kingdoms. During the trial by combat, according to the record, Sir Gregor made statements that constituted a confession to these historical actions. He spoke of the events. He spoke of the methods. He did so in front of hundreds of witnesses.
Now we examine this through the lens of existential philosophy, specifically the work of Jean-Paul Sartre, who argued that man is condemned to be free. Every action, every word, every confession is a choice. In that moment, Sir Gregor chose to speak. He chose to describe what he had done. He chose not to remain silent. The prosecution's view: this was an act of pride, a man boasting of what he considered achievements. The defense's view: this was a tactical statement, attempting to extract information. The ledger records: confession, freely given in the presence of witnesses. The content of the confession is documented. The interpretation is debated. Immediately after this confession, Prince Oberyn Martell was able to strike a decisive blow. The weapon used was coated with a substance that proved fatal to Sir Gregor. The record shows two men, both dead, in an arena. One sought justice. One sought something else. The ledger does not judge motives. It records outcomes. Section 4. The Tragedy of Dorne. Documented and filed. We come to the most mysterious section of this examination, because it deals not with what Sir Gregor did, but with what became of his body. According to the record in A Dance with Dragons, after Sir Gregor's death, a maester named Qyburn obtained the body. What followed is described only in fragments and implications. The result was a figure known as Sir Robert Strong, a silent knight in white armor, a member of the Kingsguard, a figure who never speaks, never removes his helmet, and serves Sir Robert Lannister without question. Now, the record is clear on this. We do not know what Sir Robert Strong is. We do not know if he possesses consciousness, memory, or will. We do not know if he is the mountain, or something else entirely. This is the realm of philosophical horror. The question of what it means to be a person. The question of whether a body without a mind is still a person. The question of whether a weapon without a wielder is still dangerous. The philosopher Mary Shelley in Frankenstein asked, who is the monster, the creature, or the one who made it? The record shows a body that was used, a mind that was either preserved, erased, or never existed, a figure that stands in the background of the story, silent, unknowable, waiting. The ledger records, the final chapter of Sir Gregor's story is unwritten. If he is alive, his story continues. If he is gone, his legacy continues. The record cannot determine which. Section 5. The unfinished chapter. Documented and filed. We have examined the record, the early account, the tourney, the war, the trial, the mystery.
We have applied philosophy. Plato on nature and nurture, Seneca on self-mastery, Hobbes on political terror, Sartre on freedom and choice, Shelley on the nature of monsters. Now, we render the verdict. Question 1. What did the record show? The record shows a documented pattern of behavior from childhood to death. It shows a commander associated with documented actions against civilian populations. It shows a confession, freely given, to historical crimes. It shows a body that was used after death in ways the record cannot fully explain. Question 2. What does philosophy say? Philosophy tells us that humans are shaped by their environments, that unchecked behavior becomes normalized, that power without accountability corrupts, that every choice is a reflection of who we are or who we have chosen to become. It tells us that monsters are not born, they are made. By households, by systems, by worlds that need a weapon and never ask what it costs. Question 3. What is the honest verdict? Sir Gregor Clegane was guilty. Not of being a man, for that implies he had a choice to be otherwise. He was guilty of becoming what his world allowed him to be. He was a product of a house that did not correct cruelty, a kingdom that did not punish the unacceptable, a system that used him as a tool and discarded him when he broke.
But the ledger also records this. Monsters are not born, they are made. And the mountain was made by a world that needed a monster, and never bothered to ask what it was creating. He was not a tragic figure. He was a warning of what happens when power is given to those who should never have it, when violence is rewarded,
when cruelty is unchecked. Final verdict: guilty on all counts. The record is closed. This has been Westeros Verdict. Until next time, keep the ledger honest.